Hi, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads.com, and today I want to do a tutorial showing you how to use some new larger candy beads. So these larger candy beads are 12 millimeter, and I'm using them in conjunction with the round trio beads. If you need a full list of supplies, you can go to the end of the video and watch at the very end, or below the video here, you can check out the links in the description to purchase your products from us at PotomacBeads.com and PotomacBeads.eu. If you do want to bead along, you will need some candy beads and round trios, 8s, 11s, and 15 OC beads. We're going to be working with 2 needles and learning a simple ladder stitch, how to decorate and make it look bezeled with that ladder stitch, and then also how to go around and utilize the multiple holes of the beads, which is necessary for the technique that I am showing you. So go ahead and check out that list below the box and get your materials ready, and we will begin to design the Birds of Paradise bracelet. So to begin, I have about 6 feet of beading thread on 2 size 11 needles. And you can play around with a 10, an 11, or a 12. An 11 or a 12 is going to fit the best since we're going multiple passes through. You don't need to do this 2 needles, but I'm doing it 2 needles. That way I can stick on the clasp right away, and I'll be able to bring those 2 needles back. To begin, I'm going to add 3 11 OC beads in my Crystal Lab Full Color onto my threaded needles. And then I'm going to pick up my button, which I'm using the Vitrol Full button to go along with the Crystal Vitrail, that green vitrail of the 12 millimeter candy beads. Those 3 seed beads then are just going to decorate the middle, popping in a little bit more of that silver like the back of the candies. Coming out of that, I want to take 3 of my 11 O's in the lab color on both the right and the left needle. Everything that I'm doing with the right needle, I'm also going to do with the left needle. From here, I want you to pick up one of your 8 O's. I'm using the Crystal Lab aluminum color. I'm going to crisscross through that 8 OC bead. One needle goes from the right to the left and the other from the left to the right. As I pull that down, I have it off screen just because there's so much thread showing. I want to make a triangle of sorts. That's going to make it easier for the loop on the other side of the Birds of Paradise bracelet to fit on the actual clasp. From here, we're going to begin our really, really simple pattern. Again, this is right and then left, right and then left. You can do this in multiple passes, or you can do it like I'm doing it, and we're going to do 1 full bead at a time and then move on to the next. To begin, I have my little piles of my 15s in my galvanized gold color. I have my Crystal Labrador Full 11s, and then I have my aluminum 8s. Coming out of the clasp, you want to make sure that both thread ends are even and that you have the same amount on both ends. I'm going to add 3 of my 11 OC beads, just like we did previously, 3 on each needle. And then I'm going to grab my round trio. My round trio beads, I'm using the Jet Red Luster, which is actually a green bead, just to kind of confuse you. It's that luster color on the jet. One needle is going to go from left to right, up the right side. The other needle is going to go up the left side. There are 3 holes to the trio. You're only going to use the outer 2. And the round trio is a 6 millimeter bead. So when you have the beginning of the design, you'll have the nice little kind of chain look there in the space coming out again for your clasp to sit on. As you come out of that bead, we are going to add some 11 O's on the side of the trio. The 11 O's on the side of the trio then will sit to the side. So I have 4 of my 11s that I'm going to add onto the needle. I'm going to take that right needle coming out the top of the round trio. I'm going to go back into the bottom and come out the top on that right hand side. That's going to put those 4 round trio beads right along the outer edge. From here then, I'm going to add some 15 O's. I'm going to add those in a series of 5 15 O's. The 5 15 O's then, I'm going to go back through the round trio in the same method. So I've got my 5 15s, and you're going to want to make sure that those sit right in front of the 11 O's. I'm going to do the same thing on the left-hand side here, repeating that exact same pattern. So I have 4 of my 11s, and then I'm going to get my 5 15s in. And again, those are just going to sit right along the edge. So every time you're at a round trio, we're going to be using the 2 outer holes, the left and the right, decorating first with 4 11s and then with 5 15s, making sure that they're sitting correctly, that the 11s are sitting to the top, which is going to make that look a little bezeled along the side. Once I'm to this point, I'm going to take one of my needles, so not both, I'm just taking one, and I'm going to add in 3 and 4 and 5. I'm going to add 5 of my 15s, and I'm going to go from the left hand or the right hand hole to the left hand hole. If you were using the left hand needle, you would do the opposite. Those 5s are just going to kind of sit there right along there in a peak, and I'm going to add 5 to the bottom as well. So I have those 5 gold seed beads on. I'm coming out the bottom left hole. I'm going to go up to the top of the right hole, and that's going to put those 5 beads there. With the other needle now, whichever needle was kind of hanging out there, I'm going to crisscross through these 5 beads. However, I'm only going to go through 4. I'm going to keep that middle bead, the 3rd bead in line, out of my needle, because what that's going to do then, moving that 3rd one out of line, it's going to put that 3rd bead right there at the top into a little bit of a point. Once you go through those 4 beads, then you want to make sure that that thread goes below that middle 3 bead, so you can see that thread kind of at the top there. I'm just going to push it down and make sure that it comes to the bottom, and see how that automatically puts that then at a little bit of a peak. Having come down that left hand side, then I'm going to go, or that right hand side rather, I'm going to go over to the left, again going through the first 2 and the last 2 in that series of 5. So I'm skipping that middle, or that 3rd bead. I'm just going to get my thread out of the way here for you and bring that bead down. Once I'm through those 2, then again skip the 3rd, and I'm going to go through the next 2, and then back from the bottom left up to the top left. Give a nice tight yank with both needles, and your needles should now both be at the position where they're coming out of the trio. You want to make sure your thread goes to the back of the design. So if your thread happens to be twisted a little bit to the front, just take your thread and needle that came out of the trio and kind of push it behind the beads. So there we have our first round trio. It's a little bit pointed there and has kind of a little bit of that majestic look to it. And it has the points on it, and it has the beads along the outer edge. From here, it's always going to be the same with the round trio, and I'll go back over that and kind of go over that design a little bit with you. Now what we're going to do is actually go into adding our candy bead. To add the candy bead, again, I'm going to want to make sure that my beads and my thread are kind of sitting behind that bead at the top. And we're going to add in 3 more 11 to both the right and the left needle before putting on our candy bead. Just like we did with the round trio, the left needle is going to go through the left hole of the candy bead and the right needle through the right hole. Make sure when you're putting your candy bead on that it does have a front and a back side. So here I have the back side is Crystal Lab Full with that nice vitriol popping through the middle. So I have it on there right along the middle. And now we're going to do kind of the same pattern where we're going up through that hole of the candy bead. So I'm going to start with the right needle and push the left needle off to the side. Starting with the right needle, I'm going to do the base line first. So the base line is going to consist of the 8 then we're going to go to 11, and then we're going to go to 15. To start that base line, I want you to add 1 of your 15-0s, which is going to just help to hide the thread. Next, add 6 of your 8-0s and follow with a 15-0 again, just to hide the thread. Just like the round trios, I want you to take your needle and go back into the bottom of the candy bead and have the needle come out the top. Give a nice tight pull, and that'll pull those beads nice and in the center. From here, my next count is going to be 9. I'm going to switch from my 6 8-0s to now 9 11-0s. So I have on 9 11-0s, and I'm going to do the same thing, going back through the candy bead, starting at the bottom, going towards the top. Those are going to lay right there in that space. See how there's a gap between here? We don't want that gap to occur. So in order to get it to sit right on top of it, rather than doing a peyote stitch where it would be every other, we're going to do a ladder stitch. For every 2 6-0 beads, we're going to link on to 3 11s. We're going to come down, go through the 15-0, that's hiding the thread, and come out 2 of my 6-0 seed beads. Then I'm going to count back to 3. 1, 2, 3 11-0s, and take the needle back through the 3 11-0s. Spinning around then, I'm going to come back down the 2 6-0s. And not the 15, just the 6-0s. After coming out those 2 6-0s, I'm going to grab 2 more 6-0s. Count back 3 more beads, which will be 6 down on your 11-0s, and sew up towards the top. Come back down through the 2, so you can see we're just spinning around in a circle with our thread. Give a nice tight yank after each one to make sure there's no additional thread showing. Go down through the last 2 of your 6-0s, up through the last 3 11-0s. And that's going to ladder stitch those together. Come back down the 2 6-0s and also through the gold 15-0. Give a nice tight yank to get any thread that may be showing, and then go back through the candy bead so you're at the top of the candy bead again. When you're at the top of the candy bead again, it's time to add our last layer, which is going to be our 15-0s. We added 6 of our 6s. We added 9, increasing 1 in each of those 2 pairs to our 11s. Now we're going to increase again, and we're going to add 12 of our 15s. So I'm going to pick up all 12 at once. And once I have 12 on, just like we did previously, I'm sewing back through that candy bead and out the top. Now, just like we did to hook on the 11s to the 6s, or to the 8s rather, we're going to hook the 11s to the 15s. So this time I'm going to go down my 3 11s, just like I was when I was linking on to the 8s, and I'm going to go up through 4 15s. Come back down through those 3 11s, and then down the next 3 11s. Give a nice little tight yank so you don't see any thread, and pick up the next 4 15s in the gold color. Come out through the top of those 4 15s, and then come back down the 3 11s. At the same time, if you can go down through the next 3 11s and catch on to the last 4 of the 15s. Once you're through those last 4 of the 15s, you're going to go down through the 11 and then back through the candy bead back to the top. So you've successfully added now 3 rows of your seed beads in that ladder stitch style, starting with the 8s, the 11s, and then the 15s. I'm going to set that down because I did the right hand side. Now I'm going to do the left hand side in the same way. Once you have both the left and the right bezeled up with the 8s, 11s, 15s, you're going to be linking on to and decorating the bottom of the candy and the top of the candy. This is also going to link on to the round trio and that bead that we made stick up, going through just the first, second, fourth, and fifth beads. So just like we did there, I'm going to add 5 of my 15-ohs with my right needle, which is coming out the top right, and I'm going to take it down to the bottom left. Well, it's going to arch over the end there and just add a little bit of the gold. Here along this side then, I'm going to add 2 of my 15s, connect into the 15 of the round trio, which is going to bring that nice and tightly against the candy bead, add 2 more of my 15s, and back up the candy to the right hand side. And that's going to be your connector right along the edge. So the silver is going to sit right underneath and the gold just pops right along the top. From here, we continue the same design, going on and adding in the beads. I'm going to start out by adding my 3 11-ohs on both my right and left needle, and then I'm going to add a round trio. I'm going to want those 15s to kind of sit to the top above the round trio design, but we'll be able to pull it up as we go in and add our next V point of our round trio. So on my left needle, I have 3 11s, and I have 3 11s on my right needle. From here, I'm going to grab my trio with the right needle going through the rightmost hole and the left needle going through the leftmost hole. And see how those beads kind of want to sit on the top of those 15s? Just press those 15s to the top so that way the 11s sit to the bottom. And like I said, we'll be able to get them sitting more on top as we continue. On the right hand side then, we're going to mimic what we did before, adding in 4 of our 11s along the side, and back from the top of the round trio to the bottom and back up to the top. Now it's time for our 5 15s, and mimicking, going from the right hole top into the bottom and back out the top. Again, making sure that those 15s stay to the top of the project. Left hand side, I'm going to do the same thing. Going in with my 4 11s and through the trio on the left hand side, and my 5 15s. And then back through the trio, again looping around. If you want to, you can ladder stitch these side beads down so they stay down and right next to one another. Because it's so few beads, I'm not worrying about it because I don't see them pulling up, obviously, like the mass pull up that you have with the sides of the candies because you're using larger beads. Now again, with the right needle, I'm going to add 5 of my 15s. Take that right needle down the left side and out through the trio. When I get to the trio here, I'm going to add 2 beads. I'm going to catch into that that third bead that's already there from the other side of the candy bead. See, it makes that nice little X. Add 2 more 15s and back up through the round trio. Because you're going to be continuing to get that V-ing effect, because you are going through and connecting to that V, you can, if you want to now, just keep this right hand needle or the left hand needle to the top, and you're going to continue on with your next candy bead. The reason we took it back through the baseline is because I still wanted that point, which I needed to get by putting another line through. As I continue now, I'm going to add my next of my candy beads, and first adding in my 3 11s with the right needle, and then my candy bead, making sure that when you add your next candy bead that it is facing up and that the iridescence is towards the top. Do the same thing with the left, and then if you need to rewind the video to watch again how we get the little feathers of the birds on the sides, you can go ahead and rewind and continue kind of spiraling around your candy bead. Once you get to the end of the bracelet and have on the length that you desire, you are going to make a loop to go on the other side of the cup button. For your reference, I have on 5 of my little coverings here. So I have 5 of the candy beads, which is going to leave me with 6 of the round trio beads. I have a fairly small wrist, and I usually wear about 6 3/4 inch bracelet. If you are questioning whether or not that will fit and kind of where to start or where to end, you can see where it does on me. What you can do is actually start, instead of with a round trio, you can start with one of your candy beads, and that'll extend it a little bit in length, or you can go a whole nother row of another 1/2 inch, adding on one more candy bead and one more round trio to add to the length. So that's a way to get the length. Also, if you're not positive on the length, when you start, you can always start with a stop bead and not create the clasp right away. Start from the round trio and then go back and add the clasp in case you need to add a candy bead on either side. When you get to the end, just like we did on the previous side, I want to make a triangle. So I put 3 beads on both the right and the left needle, just like I would be if I was adding my next candy bead. Instead of adding another candy bead, you're going to pick up an 8/0, again, just like we did with the cup button, and cross through the 8/0, one needle going through the left and one needle going through the right and coming out. Now what we need to do is make a loop for our button. I'm going to alternate the loop and do a little peyote stitch to match my kind of casing that I created, that bezel. I'm going to pick up a bunch of 11/0s, about 25 of them, on my needle. And when I'm going through and doing the clasp, this is usually when I am kind of doing my final cleanup. If I have beads that are mixed in together, I try to separate those out. This is a great way to work on cleaning that bead mat up, so that way you don't have so much to separate out later after you're done the project. That's what leads to buildup and having a messy bead mat. So I'm going to add a couple more beads on to get my length. And if you are doing a regular clasp, you want to grab your wire guard and then add your lobster clasp or your toggle clasp. And once you have your loop, I'm going to take some beads off here because it's getting too big. Once you have the loop size, you're going to take your needle that's in your hand, whether or not it's the right or the left, it doesn't matter. You're going to go back through that 8/0 seed bead and create your loop. Before doing anything else, I want you to check and make sure that your button is going to fit inside of that loop comfortably, that it's not going to be too big or too small. From there, I'm going to pick up the needle with the left, on the left side, and reinforce this whole entire line. So I'm going back through this whole line, adding in my 11/0s, making sure when you do this that you're not skipping any 11/0s, because then they'll kind of sit out like a point, which you do not want. When you come back through, go back through the 8, and then give the other thread a nice pull as well to make sure you don't have any extra thread showing. I'm going to pick up then whatever thread is longer, and this happens to be for me the one on my left needle, and I'm going to do my peyote stitch. For my peyote stitch, I'm going to use some of my 15s to bring that gold color to the outer edge. You're going to sew through the first 11/0. Try to keep your thread to the outside of the bead. You're going to add 2 15s onto your needle, skip a bead, and sew through the next one in line. Make sure you kind of keep that nice tight pull there. Add 2 more beads, skip a bead in the silver, in the 11s, and go through the next 11. You can see the sides just getting decorated there with that nice little gold touch. 2 beads go on, skip a bead, sew through the next 11. So I'm going to continue this the whole way around the loop, and then simply get ready at the end to tie the 2 thread ends together and kind of tuck them in my project once I have my little gold and silver peyote loop created. Again, once you get to the end, you're going to go through the last 11 as well as the 8/0 seed bead. Give a nice little pull to again create that nice little peyote loop, which mimics our nice brick stitching and our connections that we made along the sides here of our beads. To tie off the thread then, I'm simply going to go through and down the 11/0s that sit along the side here. I'm going to see if I can pull them down a little bit too. I'm going to go down into the hole of the trio, and it might be getting a little tight there, but you can kind of wiggle it through. Pull that down then. And if you can, make sure those gold beads kind of sit to the top. Pop them up there. Go through then the round trio from one hole to the other. It'll expose a little bit thread in the bottom here, but you won't see it right there. And then what I'm going to do is go up through the 3 beads on the opposite side, getting my thread ends in the same location. And I'm going to tie them off here. Right over left and left over right. If you did have to add any thread to your project, it's very simple with 2 needles. I just started when I did add thread further back here. I started by having 2 new pieces of thread that I tied the 2 threads together right behind the round trio. And then I went through and added new thread right at the base of that round trio, one going through each needle, and called it a nice easy connection. Here I'm going to go in then and tie off those thread ends, pulling it towards the back of the project, right over left, left over right, or if you need to, switch hands. Give that nice tight pull. And then along the back, you're just going to take your thread burner and burn off your thread edges. Once you are finished then, you have that fun Birds of Paradise design. You can do this design too with any color and have fun with the creation of it. You want to keep in mind that you do need the multi-hold beads in order to make this work and for it to sit correctly. Because if you don't have the multi-hold beads, these seed beads are going to pop up to the top. The vitriol ones are the only ones that we have currently in stock that you will see the lines through, but I really liked that peacock look and kind of that birdie look as I wanted to create this bracelet. You could even pop in a line of color at the bottom there too. So for the materials, I did use the jet red luster in the round trio, and in the round trio you could use a faceted round trio if you want a little bit more bling, and I used 6 of them. You may need 7 depending on the size of the wrist, and then same goes for the candy bead. The candy bead I used was the larger candy bead, so we're using the 12mm candy, and I am using 5 of them in my bracelet for my wrist, but you may need 6. The 11-0s and the 15s and the 8s are all the Miyuki brand. The 11s and the 8s are the check-coated Miyuki, and they are the aluminum silver and the crystal lab full. And then the 15 was the galvanized gold color. So play around with it all. You have a cut button at the end. I used 0.006 white wildfire thread along with my silver beads. That way you don't see too much of the thread as you're creating and making the bracelet. Again, it's a fun take on kind of a simple bezel look, going in and actually designing and making that look of the bezel with the simple ladder stitch. If you need any of the materials, you can get them below, links on the little drop down of the Show More button in the product descriptions to order from me online at PotomacBeads.com or PotomacBeads.eu, and we'd be happy to ship out the products to you. Also, if you like the video, you can do me a favor and give me a little thumbs up. Ask questions, give advice to other beaders, and kind of make that interactive as well in the comments section. Keep in mind, you can always subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates on new videos, new designs, new ideas, and new products. Also, check us out on Facebook and join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It's a great interactive group to help spark your creativity, answer questions, and become a better beader in the awesome community that we have loved to create with you. Thanks so much for watching, and have fun making the Birds of Paradise bracelet.